Spider-Man fans really want to see a solo movie, with Peter going to college and fighting some street-level bad guys. But Marvel and Sony are obsessed with giving us huge crossovers, where the whole world's in danger, and there's no way they're changing their minds. On June 20th, The Hollywood Reporter confirmed that Jon Bernthal's Punisher is going to show up in Brand New Day. And in the official mood board for the movie, you can see a picture of Savage Hulk. So we're getting a triple crossover, probably with Peter and Frank teaming up to stop a crazy Hulk who's smashing up everything in New York. The idea's got potential, mostly because they could make it so Hulk wasn't affected by Strange's spell and still remembers Peter. But that's not really what we were hoping for. And it's not like they're gonna give us what we want in some hypothetical Spider-Man 5, because it's already been 11 years since we last saw Spider-Man doing solo street-level stuff. In Homecoming, there was Iron Man. In Into the Spider-Verse, there was a whole crew of Spider people. Far From Home had Nick Fury. No Way Home had Doctor Strange and the other two Spider-Men. And Across the Spider-Verse had a full-on Spider Society. But if Spider-Man is the most popular superhero in the world and can sell tickets all on his own, why do they keep throwing him into crossovers? There are 3 reasons that explain this. The first one is that Marvel and Sony changed Spider-Man's status quo in the last few years. He's no longer a solo hero going to college and dealing with local threats. Now he's the main character in huge multiverse crossovers where entire universes are at risk. That happened in 3 out of the last 4 Spider-Man movies. And it's gonna happen again in Beyond the Spider-Verse in 2027.
7.
All these movies are exciting, emotional, and do a great job of keeping things personal. But you just can't have a grounded, local story with only one version of Spider-Man going to college and fighting mobsters if it's all about the multiverse. The whole point of the multiverse is to show wild, different realities, like we saw in Across the Spider-Verse, and to bring in variants of the main character, like in No Way Home. But the multiverse isn't the only problem, because in theory, Brand New Day isn't supposed to be a multiverse film. Or at least, that's what I want to believe. The real problem is that Marvel and Sony keep putting Spider-Man in bigger and bigger stories, with a bigger scale, more characters, bigger threats, and higher stakes. It's a classic Hollywood move to keep people hooked on new franchise entries, making it feel like things are actually moving forward, not just the same story on repeat. This usually works because fans get more hyped, more theories pop up, and more people go see the movies. In the case of MCU's Spider-Man, Peter went from stopping tech thefts in Homecoming to saving his entire universe from collapsing in No Way Home.
Big change.
The story got way bigger. And even if they forget about the multiverse stuff in Brand New Day, there's no way they're gonna lower the stakes enough to have Peter take on Scorpion and Tombstone in a grounded story. I'd love to watch that kind of film, and maybe you would too. But for a big chunk of the audience, it would feel like filler, like we just went from a massive multiverse crossover to a regular day in Peter's life. It'd be like if after Endgame, the Avengers came back just to fight the ultra-deadly Grim Reaper or Taskmaster. That kind of scale change is pretty common in comics, but you almost never see it in movies. So the closest thing they could give us to a solo Spider-Man story is a street-level adventure that still features a bunch of MCU characters. That way, they keep it feeling big without diving back into multiverse stuff. And I know what you're thinking. Maybe there was no real way to fix this for Brand New Day, because they need to gradually bring the stakes down without scaring off the audience. But Spider-Man's status quo could change for real after Secret Wars. Once Marvel does a soft reboot, there's a good chance the whole multiverse stuff will be on pause for a few years. The stakes are probably gonna drop across all stories, because they can't keep saying that the entire multiverse is at risk again in Avengers 7.
7.
They'd probably dive into the negative zone with the Fantastic Four, or start bringing in X-Men villains. That way, the whole Earth might be in danger, but not the entire multiverse, and not even the whole 616 universe. And if Marvel's big crossovers start getting smaller, the rest of the stories might follow too. That could mean Spider-Man wouldn't need to team up with other heroes to save the world anymore. We could finally get a solo Peter story, like in the Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield sagas. But sadly, that's not gonna happen. Even if the multiverse stuff finally ends, Spider-Man still won't get a true solo movie. And that's because of the second reason, the Marvel and Sony deal. You probably already know that the movie rights to Spider-Man belong to Sony, not Marvel Studios. But Holland's Spider-Man can show up in the MCU thanks to a deal between the two studios. What you might not know is that back in 2016, Kevin Feige confirmed that one clause in the agreement says at least one MCU character has to appear in every Spider-Man movie. According to Feige, they did it in good faith so they could use more toys in each movie. But really, it's just a win-win for both studios.
Is that so?
Keep in mind that this deal was signed in 2015, right before the MCU hit its peak, when they were making $1 billion with anything they threw in theaters. That was very tempting for Sony, who had just gone through the critical flop of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Sony's execs were looking to ride Marvel's wave of fame, since the MCU was already the most successful franchise in history. With appearances by Iron Man, Nick Fury, or Doctor Strange, characters who were already well known from other projects, it was clear to everyone that this new Spider-Man was part of the MCU. That worked out great for Sony, because Marvel had a way better reputation than they did. Plus, Sony still kept a big chunk of the profits, so it was in their best interest to make sure the new Spider-Man sold well. And the best way to make that happen was to make it super obvious he was part of the MCU. All they gotta do is let Marvel throw in one of their characters, so everyone knows which universe Holland's Spider-Man is in, and that's it. Now that it's official the Netflix shows are canon, it makes sense to bring in Punisher for Brand New Day to continue the events from Daredevil Born Again. If more characters mean more cash, Sony's gonna be happy.
Let's see the money.
Marvel also benefits from the deal, but more for reputation than money. By throwing in Punisher and Hulk in Brand New Day, Feige makes sure no one confuses his Spider-Man with the junk Sony's been putting out in their own universe. It also kills off any wild fan theories connecting Holland's Spider-Man to Tom Hardy's Venom or any other characters outside the MCU. Plus, the Spider-Man movies are a great excuse to use characters stuck in legal limbo. Marvel owns the movie rights to Hulk, but Universal holds the distribution rights. So Marvel can make a Hulk movie whenever they want, but they literally can't release it in theaters. But if Hulk shows up in a Spider-Man movie, problem solved. With this deal, everybody wins. Sony gets more credibility and way more money than they could make on their own, and Marvel gets to promote its other characters by riding on Spider-Man's popularity. The problem is, as long as this deal is in place, there's no way Peter can lead true solo adventures. Maybe Destin Daniel Cretton, who's directing Brand New Day, really wanted to tell a street-level Spider-Man story without any other heroes showing up. But the Marvel-Sony deal doesn't let him do that. So you can stop blaming John Watts for all those Peter's mentors showing up in the Home trilogy. He was just following orders to keep the deal in place.
I missed the part where that's my problem.
But this could be fixed, right? This clause could be changed after Brand New Day, since the studios already changed the deal back in 2019, and they even came close to ending it altogether. They could update the agreement again and drop the whole must include MCU characters rule, especially now that Sony's universe is dead. There's no need to cram in more characters just to make it clear Spider-Man's not part of a universe that doesn't even exist anymore. And let's not forget, the Marvel brand doesn't have the same power it did back in 2015. They're still solid, but it's not like everything with the Marvel logo automatically pulls in $1 billion anymore. It might even work better to present Spider-Man as a solo hero moving forward, since his name sells more than the MCU logo these days. And if that's not enough to give you hope, this whole deal could just disappear if Marvel somehow gets the full rights to Spider-Man back. Or if we're unlucky, and Sony pulls out of the MCU and starts using Spidey outside the 616 universe. But I'm sorry to say, none of these options would actually fix anything. Even if Feige had full control over Spider-Man with zero Sony interference, I'm pretty sure we still wouldn't get a true solo story because of the third reason. Solo superhero stories just don't sell like they used to.
Why don't you prove it?
The era of origin stories with a villain who has the same powers as the hero is over. And so is the era of solo superhero movies that don't have any impact on the rest of the franchise. These types of stories still exist in comics, but a big part of the movie-going audience wants much more. Thanks to the streaming wars, it's now way easier, more comfortable, and cheaper to just stay home and watch new releases on platforms. Or even pirate them in great quality since they're already being streamed. So every studio has to work extra hard to convince us to go to the theater. Right now, they can't just introduce brand new characters from scratch. They have to tell their origin stories inside someone else's movie, like they did with Ironheart in Wakanda Forever, or Yelena in Black Widow. Or they just skip theaters completely and do the origin on a streaming show, like they did with John Walker in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Luckily, they don't need to retell Spider-Man's origin for the 1000th time, since even your aunt knows it by heart. But this means we'll never see a live-action adaptation of Kraven's Last Hunt. Even though it's a fantastic comic, it's not big enough in scale, since it only affects Spider-Man.
Ah, that's a shame.
A lot of people will only pay for a ticket if the movie feels like a huge deal, like something that's gonna change their lives forever. Just like the big Marvel comic crossovers they publish 5 times a year to boost sales. But since they can't drop 5 Avengers movies per year, the next best thing is teaming up a couple of big characters. That gives you that event feeling, like in Doctor Strange 2 or Deadpool and Wolverine. I'll bet you the monetization from all my 58 videos that the near future of this genre will be movies like Spider-Man and Deadpool, Spider-Man and Wolverine, or Wolverine and Hulk. But it's gonna be really weird to see solo stories again, even for the big name characters that used to sell really well. Nowadays, for a superhero movie to be a huge hit, they have to convince us it's full of spoilers, like there's stuff in it you need to see right away, or someone's gonna ruin it for you. That's what happened with No Way Home. Right up until release day, no one was 100% sure if Andrew and Toby were really gonna show up, so we all ran to the theater opening weekend just to find out. Now, this feeling of watching something really important doesn't just come from surprise cameos or major character deaths. The first crossover between two big heroes gets fans super hyped too. Nobody's gonna want to miss Spider-Man meeting Punisher because their personalities and worldviews are completely different, and they're gonna clash during the whole movie. And even though Peter technically met Hulk at Tony's funeral, they've never actually talked. Tons of fans are gonna pack the theaters early just to catch their banter, catch all the references, and memorize every single line those two throw at each other.
I want to see it.
But if Marvel promotes the next Spider-Man movie as a solo Peter adventure with no guest characters, this whole effect disappears. The hype won't be nearly as big, and it won't hit a 200 million opening weekend like No Way Home did. But just like in the first reason, it's not enough for a movie to be full of spoilers to make it a hit. The Flash also had tons of characters, cameos, surprise reveals, and time travel, and it still bombed at the box office. And sure, there are a few contained stories that end up being really profitable, like the Batman. Matt Reeves kind of accidentally built a whole cinematic universe around Pattinson's Batman, with the Penguin and all the other spin-offs they got planned. But back when we went to the theater in 2022, we all thought we were just getting a standalone Batman story that wasn't connected to anything else. Maybe you're thinking this example completely undermines the argument, because if the Batman did well without throwing in extra characters, then Spider-Man could do the same. But that's not really how it works. The Batman was a hit with fans, critics, and casual viewers, and it made $770 million, which is a ton of money. But it still made less than any of the MCU Spider-Man movies, even without adjusting for inflation. I'm sure the Batman 2 could easily pass 700 million again, especially with all the love for the first one and strong word of mouth. But there's no way it's hitting the 1.9 billion that No Way Home pulled in. If Marvel and Sony think crossovers are the only way to hit those numbers, then it makes sense they threw in Punisher and Hulk. They'll keep cramming in characters to keep breaking that billion-dollar line. Until that changes, we're not going to get a solo Spider-Man story, no matter who owns the rights to the character. Even James Gunn picked up on this change in audience taste too. That's why Superman is packed with characters and feels like a major DC event, instead of just a story about the Man of Steel. But will Gunn be able to tell a good story with so many characters in the mix? I'll talk about that in this video.
Bye-bye now.